Recently, a mom wrote me and asked me a question about her two boys. She has a 2-year-old and a 14-month-old. Her and her husband had tried to put them in the same room, but they keep getting up and playing with each other, getting their toys out and all that kind of thing and bothering each other. She wanted to know what she could do to get them to stay in the same room together. In this short video, I'm going to tell you exactly what you can do about this kind of situation so that you can avoid all the drama and have peaceful, calm, and hassle-free evenings. Also, at the end of the video, you're going to see a link that you can go to find a video that's going to tell you how to get your children excited about getting into bed without fussing and being there on time. As some of you know, I had 9 children, so there was plenty of times when 2 or even 3 siblings, sometimes there were infants and toddlers, that had to be in the same room and go to bed at the same time. We had to put them in those rooms and expect them not to bother each other, not to get up and play, and so on. This can be done, and you don't need to have constant hassles once they understand what your expectations will be. So how do you teach them what's expected? Here's what you can do. Number 1, make sure that they are in an age-appropriate bed. One of the issues that this mom had was she had her 14-year-old already in a big boy bed. I do not recommend transitioning a child from a crib to a toddler bed until they're at least 2 and a half is even better. Even a little later is okay, but not earlier. For safety reasons as well as sleep issues, it is better for them to be contained until they're a little bit older. Number 2, have a regular bedtime routine. There is another video on this channel that tells about a regular routine that looks good for a toddler, so I'm not going to go into the specifics of that in this video. But having a regular routine lets your children know what comes next, and if they know what's expected to come next, then they're going to be much more cooperative about staying in their bed. They'll also be more ready to be obedient about leaving each other alone. Number 3, make your expectations clear. Just laying your child down in bed and saying, stay in bed, and walking out of the room, that really doesn't get into the mind of a toddler. They need to have an eye-to-eye conversation with you. You need to tell them very clearly what you're expecting. When you get in bed, you are to stay in bed until I tell you it's time to get up. You are also not to bother your brother or sister. Do you understand these instructions? If they're old enough, you can even have them repeat that back to you, so you're sure they understand, they know, and you know what's expected. Number 4, put them in bed at the same time. Some suggestions by other people have been to stagger their bedtimes. Put one child to bed, let them fall asleep, and then put the other child to bed and let them fall asleep. No, what you're doing then first is you're struggling. And remember, if you're struggling, something needs to change. You don't need to have that kind of hassle every night. Your expectations at that point are that you're going to keep your child from disobeying your instructions rather than allowing them to have the opportunity to do the right thing. What your mindset needs to be is that you're going to give them instructions and you're expecting them to obey those instructions, not that you try to arrange things so that they can't do the right thing on their own. This is part of the mature parenting that I teach in my book, How to Train Your Child to Behave. So if you don't have that book yet, I really want to suggest you get that, and you can find the link in the description below. What you want to do is have a mindset of obedience and cooperation between you and your children. Number 5, have them face away from each other. In the instructions I gave to this mom, I told her to tell her little 2-year-old when she lays him down in bed to face away from his brother. This is just to help him with that temptation of not, wanting to interact with his brother. He's, that's something that's just a natural thing. If you see that little child over there and you're only a 2-year-old, you are going to want to get reactions from them. So it's just to help him with that temptation. He always has the opportunity to turn back over and not do what you said. Hopefully he won't. But you don't want to set a TV in front of a child and then say don't watch it, right? So it's better to face them away, and so that in this case the younger one isn't going to have the understanding of all of that, but the 2-year-old, you can tell him to face this way and go to sleep. Number 6, do not get angry. It's very important to remember when I'm talking about this next step after this one that you don't get angry. This is part of training your children to behave. It's part of the training process. So you kind of have to expect that the first time you put them in bed, they're probably not going to do exactly what you want them to do. And that's going to be that time when you're going to set that precedent. You're going to set what the expectations are. They're going to know what comes next if they do the right thing and know what comes next if they do the wrong thing. And you're going to be setting that all up. So be ready for that and don't get angry when the first time you put them in bed, they may not do what you want them to do. Number 7, take immediate action if they disobey. Now, the mom that wrote me, she had the 2-year-old and the 14-month-old. So really, it's going to be up to the 2-year-old. He's the older one, and I know you think he's 2. That's not much older. It's still older, okay? It's older enough. A 2-year-old, believe it or not, can understand, they can understand what they are supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do if you lay it out clearly in 2-year-old language. They can understand. So what you want to do is make sure that that 2-year-old understands that if he doesn't do what you are expecting of him, that there is going to be a consequence for that. And it needs to be a consequence that he's not going to like. It's funny, I remember when some of my children were little and when I'd first put them in a room, because there were, when we had children, we had to move from one room to another. First there'd be these children, then we'd have another baby and we need to move, to move people around and put them in different rooms and so on. So I remember that sometimes when we would put them in a room together, or when we'd go to another place and they had to take a nap or something like that, even the 2-year-olds and even younger than that, when I tell them you need to lay down and stay in bed, then if they didn't do it for some reason and I walked in, they would immediately lay down. Now, why'd they do that? Because they knew what they were supposed to be doing. They did. They knew what they were supposed to be doing. So don't be confused or think that they don't know what's expected if you've told them and you've backed it up. They do know. So don't be confused about that. Now, the mom who wrote me had a 2-year-old and a 14-month-old. So it was really going to be up to the 2-year-old to do the right thing, because the 14-month-old first is not quite old enough to understand everything that you're trying to say. They're not quite going to understand the expectations. That's another reason why they're not old enough to be in a toddler bed yet, right? They need to be in a contained situation. But the 2-year-old is old enough, and 2 and 2.5-year-old, they should be able to stay in their bed. And what you want them to do is make the choice to stay in their bed and leave their brother or sister alone. You want him to choose to do the right thing, even if his brother's making noise or is trying to get his attention or whatever. This is the point where he's going to learn some self-control, and you want to help him along learning that self-control. So you can tell your 2-year-old it's up to you to do the right thing, because your brother or sister is just little and you know what to do. You know to stay in bed. So show them the right thing to do. Then put them in bed. Now, let's say that you put them in bed and then they get up a few minutes later and they start playing with their brother or sister or getting toys or whatever. Let's say they do that. What are you going to do? Well, there's very specific reasons to give an age-appropriate spanking. One of the reasons is if they clearly know what they're supposed to do and they disobey it on purpose. That would be this case, right? You've already set out the expectations. They understand what they're supposed to do, and they chose not to do that. So it would be appropriate to go in, give them a swat on the diaper without anger. Without anger, remember that. Give them a swat on the bottom, whether it be a diaper because they're little or maybe they're 3 or 4, a swat on the bottom, a couple swats on the bottom, whatever it might take. And then put them back in bed and say, I told you you needed to stay in bed, not angry, calm and patient, and say, I told you to stay in bed. That's where I expect you to stay. Do not bother your brother or sister, and face the wall away from them. And then walk out. Now, if you do this consistently, this is going to work. Some of you might say, oh my, I don't want to give them a spanking. I'd rather go through this situation with gentle parenting, meaning I go and talk to them again and I explain to them again and I give them a hug and I say, I want you to be back in your bed and so on. Okay, that's not going to work, guys. They're going to keep getting up. They're not going to obey you. And I'm also saying, don't give them a bribe. Just expect your children to obey. If you do, this isn't just for you. Some people think that if I tell my child to obey, it's just for me so I don't have hassles. No, Not having hassles is just a huge, wonderful benefit. It's a wonderful benefit for you, but it also is a benefit for them. Isn't it easier for them if they know to get in bed, turn over, and go to sleep? And there's no hassles, and there's no problems. Isn't that easier for them? It's easier for them, and it's easier for you. It's easier for everyone. So in the end, if you give them an age-appropriate spanking for willful disobedience, and you're calm and loving and patient when you do that, then it's an appropriate thing to do. So you can give them that little spanking. You can tell them you told them that they needed to stay in bed, and that's what you expect of them. And then you can leave the room. So what's going to be number 8? Number 8 is going to be repeat. Repeating this no matter what they do, no matter how many times they do it, you go back into there, you do not get angry, you do the exact same thing, you never have any more of a conversation. We're going to do this very robotically because they need to know exactly what to expect. They expect that if they go to sleep, there's going to be no problems, and they're going to wake up and everything will be fine. They're going to know that if they don't go to sleep and they get up and they cause, trouble in the room or whatever, they're going to get a spanking, something they do not like, and then they're going to have to go to bed anyway. So this is what they're going to learn, and they're going to understand. So then what's going to happen is you're going to be able to put them down in a room, and they're going to go to sleep without any problem. Your repetition with the exact things that I just described, doing it exactly that way every time, is going to be consistency. And consistency is the key to effectiveness. Like I said at the beginning of this video, there's a card on the screen right now you can click on to find out exactly what to do step by step to get your child excited about going to bed on time without fussing. Parents, if you're struggling, something needs to change, and you can do this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.